Hey podcast listeners, thank you for tuning into the Marketing for Artists podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sayre, and you're tuning into the second episode, which is exciting, it's fun, it's a little scary for me because it is the second episode, but we're going to start off easy with this one. I'm going to give you 4 amazing marketing tips for successful working artists. So stay tuned. I'm excited to get into it. Our first tip is going to be all about branding. Build a brand. Now, I know the word branding is kind of scary for artists, and artists have a hard time seeing themselves as a brand, even though they are. So a lot of people associate branding with huge companies such as Nike or Adidas, or even elaborate creators such as Kylie Jenner. However, no matter how big or small you are, branding is always going to be important. In short, branding just tells stakeholders who you are, what you stand for, what you're doing, what you're delivering, and how you're doing it. See, branding is the visual and physical contextual message on who you are. See, branding combines a cohesive set of elements, such as a logo or colors or even sounds across all of your mediums, across your advertising, across your work, and across your marketing efforts in order to help make you easily identifiable to all your stakeholders. And not just identifiable, but relatable. Successful branding really just helps establish your experience, your knowledge, your intent, and your work. Successful branding will help develop new relationships with stakeholders. It will help you develop new partnerships. And most of all, branding will really help influence the action that you want for people to take with your work. So let's think about that for a second. Branding is all the elements of your work, who you are, and what your intent is combined in such a way to influence actions that you want people to take with your work. Let's take, for example, a fashion designer. Say you have a store. Do you want people to walk into your store and feel sad or depressed? Or do you want them to walk into your store and feel very happy and excited and motivated? Right? So your branding is going to take into place how people respond when they walk into your store. Right? It's beyond just your logo. It's going to be the colors, it's the sound, it's the music. What kind of music are you displaying in your store? Right? If you're selling country apparel, boots and vests and denim, the type of music you choose may be different than somebody, who's selling mini skirts or lingerie even. So your branding is just all of the elements of the things that make you special and make you stand out. But also is going to let people know what you're about the moment that they see your brand, or they see your work, or they see your art. If you're a painter and all of your work is organic, it's about nature and it's about Mother Earth. It's vines, it's trees, it's earth, it's mountains. Right? Does it make sense then to display your work in something that's a very structural, very square, very modern or contemporary or plain? Maybe if you're trying to show a juxtaposition, but most likely it's going to make sense to display your work in an area that echoes your mission. So maybe you display your work in a greenhouse because it goes along with your mission, it goes along with your works. Right? See, that's also part of your branding. It's not just your logo, it's not the signature that you use on your page, it's everything combined together. So let's think of a few examples of maybe people some artists who have great branding. One name that immediately pops into my mind is Lady Gaga. The moment you say her name, you know exactly what you're getting. People who go to her show know exactly what to expect at a performance. They know the kind of style, they know the sound they expect to hear, they know the kind of performance they expect to see. Right? Whether or not you like her work, you know exactly what she's about, and you know the kind of style that she's about, and she's there to make a scene, and she does a fantastic job at it. Another maybe Taylor Swift. She has worked very hard on her brand or her image. Right? Whether it's a political stance that maybe she's taken, down to the way that she performs a song on stage. Kylie Jenner, another person all about branding who works very hard. The moment you see one of her advertisements, one of her business's advertisements, you know exactly who it belongs to, you know exactly what it's about, you know about the quality of the product, just based on the ad, just based on how it looks. And whether it's an ad that was created 5 months ago or an ad that was created, a few days ago, they all have a cohesive look and they feel the same. They feel like they're coming from the same person. So even if we jump back into time, if you think about Andy Warhol, he had a brand. People knew what he stood for. People knew what he was about. But those are some extreme examples of some very famous people. Brands don't have to be in your face. Right? If you're a photographer and you're a family portrait photographer, maybe your brand is that you're very professional, you're very friendly, and people want to recommend you, and people want to talk about you and share your photos and be happy when they view your work. So that's also part of your brand. So things that you post should also feel very excited and very friendly and very pleasant. So branding is probably the number one thing that you need to take into account when you're trying to really grow and develop your artist career. The moment that people look at your work, they're going to have an immediate reaction. And so you want to influence the reaction you want people to have. Right? So when they walk into a store or a studio, if you want them to feel very happy and bright, you're going to have bubbly music, you're going to have, bright lights, the lights are going to be tinted to a certain color. And if you're selling a fashion line that's dark and mysterious, maybe they walk into your studio or they walk into your store and it's dark and it's dimly lit, right? And you have spotlights shining on specific products to represent them and show them, right? So branding is something that you should be taking into consideration from day one. It's the colors, it's the sounds, it's the feel, it's even the texture, If you're representing yourself as a handmade, clothing item, the texture is going to be very important in your brand. So branding is going to be the number one thing to really start thinking about is, who am I? What is my intent? What am I trying to accomplish? And how am I going to do that? Through elements and through logos, through colors, and through sounds. And how can I bring all of these things together cohesively, to unite all the pieces of what I'm doing, to represent and to influence my brand and to influence other people. Hey podcasters, we're going to take just a quick break to talk about our new partner, Stitcher. If you haven't heard about it, Stitcher is a premium app used for listening to podcasts. Some of its premium features include a sleep timer, curated content on your homepage, ad-free listening, special content from makers such as Marvel. Who doesn't like Marvel? You know what? Don't answer that question. If you don't like Marvel, I don't want to know. And best of all, Stitcher Premium is extremely affordable. At only $4.99 a month, you can get access to great and quality content curated just for you with special features. If this is interesting to you, you should check it out at stitcher.com/premium. And if you're interested for trying this for 1 month free, enter the promo code Marketing for Artists. That's all one word, Marketing for Artists. I'll link in the show notes. If you're on YouTube, I'll link it in the description below. So back to it. Alright, so we've talked a few minutes about branding, but I really want to give you pointers on how to develop your brand moving forward. And these I'm going to give you a few tips, and these tips are going to work no matter how large your business or your service or your art or your company is, right? Or whether you're starting off, it's going to be the same process. And if you're not sure whether or not your brand is good, running through these steps is going to help you, learn and decide whether or not your brand is accurately representing you. So your first step is going to be, ask yourself, what do you stand for? What is it that I stand for? What are you trying to say through your service or your product? What is it that your art means to you? How is your product or your service unique? How does it stand out from the competition? So answering these first few questions is going to give you a great idea on where to start. So knowing the answer to what it is that you stand for, what it is that your work means to you, how it's unique, all of those things is really going to give you the key elements that encompasses all of your brand. So knowing what makes your craft or your product, your service special is key. Is the key reason why stakeholders are going to invest in you. Stakeholders, and you'll hear me use this term a lot, stakeholders. Stakeholders, anyone who's involved with your product, or your company or your brand. So it could be someone who's invested money, someone who buys from you. It could be a partner that you collaborate with. It could even be products that you use. So let me give you an example. Say you're a painter and you use Liquitex paint. Technically, they're a stakeholder in your art because their product is directly represented in your brand. That's another reason that you want to ask yourselves these questions, because we also want to think about the types of products that you use in your own brand. Do they have a negative representation? Do they mean something, to the public? These are all things that you take into consideration when building your brand. But knowing what makes you unique, what makes you special, is the reason that these stakeholders are going to buy into you. And stakeholders don't buy in blindly. Have you ever went to a website or went into a store and bought something on a whim and immediately regretted it? I know I have a number of times. Most of us are going to research a brand or research a product, whether it's clothing, an instrument, or even art products. We're going to research those brands before we buy into it. And that's what your stakeholders are going to do too. So the first step, know what it is that you stand for. So second, what do you want to accomplish? That's number 2. What do you want to accomplish? You need to determine what your goals are, right? So let me give you a few examples of this. Is your goal to sell your artwork to make lots of money? Right, so that's going to influence the actions that you take with your branding. It's going to influence the words you choose. Are you a not-for-profit? Are you here just to spread a message and to help people? Are you here to create high-end, highly crafted, fine-tuned furniture, that's supposed to be exquisite and rare and beautiful? Or are you creating something that's mass-produced or not really supposed to feel expensive? All of these things, like what it is that you're trying to accomplish. This is going to do a few things. Like I said, it's going to help you choose the words, the elements, that accent, that goal, but it's also going to tell you how to promote your work and how to promote your brand. So number 3 is a pretty big one that I think all business owners or artists and anyone in general really will have will struggle with this one. I know I even struggle with this. And number 3, which is probably the most important one, is ask a friend. Take the above questions that you just answered for yourself and then ask a friend. What is it that my art means to you? What is it that my product means to you? How does it look in your book? How does it feel? What does it represent? And then have them describe your work or your service. And this is going to greatly help you better understand your product, because a few things are going to happen. They're going to describe your product and and their answers and their responses may not line up with yours at all, which then means your idea of what you're doing isn't being perceived by your stakeholders, right? So then that means your brand isn't successful. It means you're not taking the right elements and the right, designs and colors and sounds and all of those things together to create the message that you're trying to spread, right? Or maybe their answers line up exactly with what you want your brand guidelines to be, which means that you've done everything right? You're building the right steps, you're promoting in the right way, you're using the right messages and the right words. Or maybe, it's mixed match. Maybe they'll be able to give you ways to improve. A really good brand is going to remain unique, but while still, catering to your stakeholders, right? So if your brand isn't at all useful or unique to your stakeholder, they're going to have no reason to buy in or invest into that. So very important to ask a friend. They're going to give you the honest, they're going to give you the spoiler-free review, the brutal truth. They're going to tell you what it is that your brand is lacking, right? And you don't have to tell them what it's about, right? Because, whatever answer they give you is going to be truthful and it's going to be from their heart. They may tell you that your product sucks, but don't be discouraged if they give you a negative answer, right? But ask them, okay, well, how do you like that? Do you like what my product represents? And even if it doesn't line up with what you're saying, but they enjoy it and they like it, well, maybe that means you need to re-ask yourself the first questions, what is your goal? Maybe your product is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and maybe we just need to realign our vision of that. Or, ask them, what will make it better? What will improve it? And they'll be able to help give you, that answer. So then step number 4 for, building a brand or improving your brand is going to be combining your notes. So take all of that information you've just gathered, your goals, what makes you unique, what is it that you stand for, what is your ambitions and what your stakeholders say about it. Combine them together to create a solid plan on how to promote, all of those elements, deciding, what represents your brand, what doesn't, and being able to combine all of these things together is going to tell you whether or not your brand is working or what you need to do for your upcoming brand. I'm giving you a freebie. When in doubt, you did 1 through 4 and you still feel like you're missing something in your brand, or your stakeholders still feel like you're missing something, you should try what I call a SWOT analysis. I'm sure you've heard of this if you've taken any sort of business class. It's SWOT, S-W-O-T, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So what you do is you gather 10 of your competitors. If you don't have 10, you gather as many as you can. Or you gather more for a complete list. You build a grid, right? And you find out what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their opportunities to grow are, and what their threat towards you is. And what you'll end up developing is a grid of all the things that work and all the things that don't, the areas for improvement, and what you'll be able to then to do is see where you fit in that range. And what it's going to do is help you, develop your own brand based off of the weaknesses and the strengths and the threats of other companies. Tip number 2 that I'm going to give you is expand your horizon. Expand your market. Dream big. And I'm sure you'll hear this in any kind of pep talk or coach, or a life coach. They always say dream big, big goals. But it's so true for any working artist, whether you're a painter or a photographer or a graphic designer or a fashion designer, even an architect. Don't limit yourself to a local level, right? Unless your goal is to only be local and you can make enough to sustain your business on the local level, dream big. Expand your market. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen artists really limit themselves, their work and their experiences because they only tell their friends and their family or, the 200 people that they're linked to on Facebook. I think the stat is 74% of all American adults have a Facebook, right? You have a huge opportunity to expand beyond, the local level, right? So if you have a hard time finding people, regionally, to invest in your product, well, there are going to be a lot more people like you, scattered throughout the country, throughout the world even. Right? For every one of you, you're going to find more and more and more, but the only way you're able to do that is to really expand outside of your local region. Right? You're going to find people where, your product is going to seem fresh and new to them because they haven't seen it, or they haven't seen people who are like that or influenced by the sort of same things that you're influenced by. So expanding your market is going to be huge. I mean, if you take into account that Instagram has 1 billion monthly users, and all of those users, half of them log in daily, your potential to scale is enormous, just solely based on expanding your reach. Right? So don't limit yourself to just being telling your friends and the family about it. It's great, still tell them, but think bigger and think outside the box. Learn to scale your business, dream big. Where do I start? Well, one place would be, Facebook communities and Facebook groups. If you've seen any of the Facebook ads lately, it's, there's a Facebook group for you. And that is 100% true. You can always find people who are interested in the same sort of goals and the same things that you are, simply by looking for a Facebook group. You could also use targeted ads. If you've got a little bit of a budget to spend on marketing, you can literally target people who are interested, based off of their interests. If it's abstract painting, you can literally target people who have that interest, right? And then be able to scale and get your name known outside of the local region, right? So those are two really, effective ways to really develop. Another way would be just simple networking. Go to Instagram, go to the search bar, and just start searching, hashtags that, if you tag your work with West Virginia model, go in that hashtag and find other users who are posting similar content or other users who are liking content like yours, and just leave a comment on their page or leave a message in their, in their DMs. So simple networking. Dream big, expand your market. You will have an easier time trying to expand your business when you set bigger and larger goals. So that was tip number 2. So tip number 3, which ties into our last tip, I can't even believe that I kind of have to bring it up, but I also can't stress it enough. Get social media. It is 2020. I'm going to say 99.999% of anybody, if any of your stakeholders are going to have social media. So unless they're, of a generation that was long before social media, they're going to have some social media one way or another, whether it's Instagram, whether it's TikTok, whether it's YouTube. You have to get on social media that matches, what your product and your service is doing. You're not going to be able to scale easily without social media. But also social media is just the quickest way just to, post an image, post your message, and post your brand. Instagram, people can literally go to your Instagram and just learn everything that you're about, what you stand for, learn your brand, your message, all of those things in a matter of seconds, right? So social media is vastly important, and also from the marketing standpoint and the advertising standpoint, it's also the easiest to advertise on. In most platforms, you can target the specific kind of person that you want to show your content to. So you can literally target somebody based solely on their interests, which is allowing you to really maximize on your marketing efforts, because it's allowing you to show your content to people who want to see your content. So outside of just advertising, right? Social media is going to be the quickest way for you to show your brand and show all of your content to people. So outside of just the face value of just, showing your brand and, advertising, there are other strong marketing reasons to be on social media. So let me give you another reason. If you don't have a Facebook, how are you going to be able to monitor reviews and comments that people are making about your business on Facebook? Do you see the dilemma there? People could be saying very negative reviews about your business, about your art or your service, and you would have no way of knowing or being able to help, change the narrative of that or get on top of that. Right? So it's a very important thing to stay on top of social media, if not for at least showing your work, but also controlling what people are saying about your brand. Right? It's also going to give people another way to contact you and helping control and create engagement for your brand. Let me give you an example. Say you're a photographer and you've done a very beautiful, elaborate boudoir session. It's beautiful colors, very high quality detail. Maybe you even printed it on very, beautiful paper, and the client, the customer, shares those photos on social media. They've talked about the quality of the product they received. They talked about how professional you were, but you don't have a Facebook, right? Well, their review really doesn't do anything for your brand, because people aren't going to know who you are still, right? They're going to have to go to the person, send them a message, get information from them, and then find out how to reach out to you, right? So it's very cumbersome. People aren't going to be able to, they're not going to be able to tag your brand on social media, so people aren't going to be able to click on it and go see more of your work, right? And then also, you won't be able to thank them for the kind words they've said to you, right? So you won't be able to help, create future work from that person, right? It's going to be very hard for you to maintain the, the client appreciation that person deserves for giving you a quality review. Right, so having social media is going to be very important, from showing your brand to giving people a way to connect with you and contact you, right? And it's going to add validity to your, to your brand. So please, if not for your own brand and product, for my own sanity, please just get a social media account. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they're all going to be very important to developing and growing and your marketing efforts and advertising. There's no other way to do it. So just get it. No ifs, ands, or buts, just do it now. Step number 4, final step today, it's kind of combining all of the elements that we've talked about. Right? It's a compound, and that's collaboration. Right? It's going to involve your brand, right? Because you're going to want to collaborate with people who are, going to echo your services or compliment you in some way. It's going to help you, get outside of that local or that small scale level, and it's going to involve social media. So collaboration is a great way to help scale your business in a couple different ways. One is it's going to help you get introduced to the person you're collaborating with audience. And so that could be somebody who is already interested in the kind of content you produce and who maybe don't know you yet. So it's a quick way just to get your name, kind of thrown out or add validity to your brand to a new audience. Or it's going to get you introduced to an audience who maybe, if you're working with somebody who, maybe does opposite work you are, but can still help complement your services, it's going to help get you introduced to an audience who doesn't know or would never find out about your product or service, which is very important, right? It's going to get you in front of new people. It's also going to help, other stakeholders, people who are, maybe, B2B, who are going to help be able to invest into your business, become interested, right? Because if they learn that you're collaborating with other artists or other businesses, they're going to want to hop in on that bandwagon, which is only going to help scale your audience reach. And also, it's going to help add validity to your brand. If you're a small business and you're working with, other large businesses or other, small businesses, it's going to make you look like the expert while also making you look bigger than you may actually be. And the opposite is very true. If you're a large scale business and you're working with other small businesses, right, they're going to want to also hop on that bandwagon, and it's going to make you look, compassionate and giving, which is going to add, a lot of validity and care and, a great look to your brand. So you're going to want to hop on, some sort of collaboration, and this could be, a collaboration on a podcast. It could be collaboration on an art project, right? It could be, some sort of community event, right? You could host an event, you could host an award show. Some sort of collaboration is going to be great validity, and it's going to be a great way to kind of scale and add reach to your brand. So I know the fourth one was very quick, but collaboration, super important. You do not want to pass an opportunity up to collaborate. So with that being said, if you're somebody who wants to collaborate with the Marketing for Artists podcast, maybe you want to come on and share your success stories, you want to share what's worked for you in the marketing world, you just want to talk marketing, maybe you want to ask questions or learn something new, or just have, a one-on-one conversation. Maybe you want to do a live, coaching session. I'm all for it. So you can reach out to me by going to Sayre, SAYRE, designstudio.com/podcast. There you'll find the podcast episodes, and you'll find a contact form where you can reach out to me. Another way that you can collaborate with me is by sponsoring an episode. And so what that means is you'll be able to just, buy an episode, and I'll be able to mention and sell your product to the listeners of this podcast. If that interests you, you can also go to SayreDesignStudio.com/podcast. There's a form, and then there's also a link to our Patreon page. So check it out, reach out if you have any questions. With that being said, thank you again for tuning into the second episode of the Marketing for Artists podcast. I've been your host, Chris. It's been a pleasure helping you scale and grow your art.
So you wanna know about dinosaurs? Well, that's fine, of course, I've got time to source my knowledge on the matter to you all. Dinosaurs are awesome! I'm not an expert, in truth I only saw some pictures in the book, but I had a good look, I didn't bother with the words, so it probably only took 3 minutes, but despite the bits I missed, I got the gist. Relax on my dinosaur facts, attack you like a fist. About 100 years ago, in the days of Jesus and Shakespeare and Moses, dinosaurs roamed this planet with one cause: to walk around being dinosaurs. They first came to life when a rhino and a crocodile became rife with the horn and had to cock a while later when the baby was born. Do you know what they saw? Crocodinosaurus. A dinosaurus? A dinosaur! Before long it started to self-replicate. The rhino tried to stop it, but by then it was too late. For soon there were hundreds and thousands and still more ready to bite and feed, fight and bleed and roar. So you wanna know about dinosaurs? Well, that's fine, of course, I've got time to source my knowledge on the matter to you all. Dinosaurs are awesome! I'm not an expert, in truth I only saw some pictures in the book, but I had a good look, I didn't bother with the words, so it probably only I missed, I got the gist. Relax on my dinosaur facts, attack you like a fist. Focus while I talk about the diplodocus. Jokers laugh at its enormous neck. It's so big, like a mile tall and a mile in length, with the hard head held up with incredible strength. Don't get in its way or even look it in the eye, cause you'll receive a flippin' headbutt from a mile up in the sky. Whoosh, crack, now you know the sorrow that follows a beast that eats baguettes with one swallow. T-Rex is next and it's coming to get ya. Hands outstretched, steady and ready to molest ya. Ugly on the outside, worse within, with devious desires and a right pervy grin. Its mind's dirt, it flirts with skirt like dessert, or a young boy with the fun toy to hurt. But no matter how happy the horribly blue thought, it can't clap with joy cause its arms are too short.
So you wanna know about dinosaurs? Well that's fine, of course, I got time to source my knowledge on the matter to you all. Dinosaurs are awesome! I'm not an expert, in truth I only saw some pictures in the book, but I had a good look, I didn't bother with the words, so it probably only took 3 minutes. But despite the bits I missed, I got the gist. Relax on my dinosaur facts, attack you like a fist.
Triceratops never stops terrorizing, 3 horns rising, very surprising, chiding behinds in a furious frenzy, tossing suckers up in the air, very offending. Pterodactyl acts all superior, flying up above you, loves to sneer at ya. Silly head shaped like a crocodile clip, perfect for picking up dropped fish and chips, harassing the tourists that walk on the pier. Wake you up too soon with the squawk in your ear. Hanging at the seaside, what are they doing? Just being mean jerks till your holiday is ruined.
So you wanna know about dinosaurs? Well that's fine, of course, I got time to source my knowledge on the matter to you all. Dinosaurs are awesome! I'm not an expert, in truth I only saw some pictures in the book, but I had a good look, I didn't bother with the words, so it probably only took 3 minutes. But despite the bits I missed, I got the gist. Relax on my dinosaur facts, attack you like